instead of telling myself the story that if you're true, honest, and you share too much of yourself, people will be turned off and leave. I've really been putting intentional focus into saying what is meant for me will find me. I know I'm a great friend, but it also has so much to do with timing and so much to do with energetic fit. And if that person, as beautiful and amazing, as wonderful as they are, just if it's not matching, that's okay.
All eyes on me. I shine with everything I do. All eyes on me. Yeah, I'll do me and you do you.
This is the Bold Bitch podcast, where I dive deep into conversations around taboo topics. I'm your gay, ADHD-having, and compulsively curious host, Gia Goodrich, and among many things, I have a very low tolerance for bullshit. So each week, I have intriguing conversations with experts, tastemakers, rebels, and rule breakers who choose to boldly show up and own their opinion in this super intense call-out culture we live in. Because speaking your mind and trusting your gut isn't easy, but the boldest, truest version of yourself is exactly what the world needs. Hi, hey, how are yas? This week, we are doing a sola episode. I just really wanted to chat. I mean, I know that if you are a listener of more than one episode, which by the way, I love you for that, you're amazing, you get these little glimpses into some of the themes that are coming up and things that I'm going through navigating. But I just wanted to, sit down. Well, in my case, stand up because I have ADHD, but just, have a little heart to heart about some of these themes that have really been popping up majorly in my life. Rolling with the motherfucking punches. Like, I can just tell you, I've dealt with burnout, I've dealt with grief, I've dealt with hope and excitement and a lack of productivity, fear on level 10, and then also this like beautiful trust and doors opening up. It's just like the full gamut of things, but generally most of them operating at a very high level of intensity. And one of the things that I think I am personally proud of for myself is that I've been really able, for the most part, to stay present during most of them and allow myself to go through instead of denial, instead of victimhood, instead of stuffing and powering through, like really allowing myself to go through things. So what am I talking about? Well, let's start with the universe. So I have been really expanding what I am comfortable with when it comes to the woo. And you may have noticed I've been talking, I've always used terms like energy and alignment, but I've really spent a lot of time and energy being closed off, operating purely in this masculine space of like, get it done, stuck in my brain, severing the connection between my brain and body, and just like powering through. One of the things that has really happened as I'm approaching 40, my body is just not letting me do that. And my body is really being allowed. And the way that that has manifested the last few years is in a lot of digestive issues, really intense energy regulation stuff, and autoimmunity, just all of this stuff that we can all boil it down to. The body is saying no. The way that you're showing up, the way that you're operating, your closed off nature is not going to cut it. I feel like I've had this invitation to continue like the research that I do into all sorts of areas, but really look into and lean into the softer, energetic places and allow myself to be open. Because one of the things that I know for myself to be true is that with this masculine energy, and I'm using these gendered terms not as a one-to-one with gender, but just thinking about how certain energies are encoded and the way that we're socialized to operate. So the part of this, let's call it masculine energy, this scientific energy, this I'm right, you're wrong kind of energy, that is something that really is not grounded in empathy and love and grace and allowing for there to be room. It's really not grounded in nuance. And in the majority of my life, spending in this space, it has been so much easier for me to turn off to everything else and turn off to, things like angels and things like spells. And all of this stuff that even still, there's a part of me that's like rolling my eyes and judging it as I'm saying it. But then also, it's been true that I've had experiences in my life that I just can't boil down to anything else. I've had moments where I've manifested just wild things. Like, there's no way that there was this one trip in Vegas when I was living in LA as an actor. I had no money. My car had literally broken down on the way to going to escape everything to visit my only friends I made in the time I was down there, almost a year, who lived in Vegas, not actually in LA. And as I was driving down, my car broke down. And then I was just in Vegas, $50 to my name. I was there for a week. So you can imagine $50 doesn't really go that far. And I was supposed to do this show with Shannon Doherty about scaring people. That didn't end up working, but I ended up getting another $50 and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, the morning comes and I know I have a flight from LA to Portland. And I just so desperately want to go home. And the acting thing wasn't really working out. I was feeling just so disheartened by the whole experience, so disillusioned, so fatigued. I knew I wanted to go home, but I woke up that morning in Vegas, which was like a 4-hour car ride away. I just thought, okay, I'm just going to get on the phone and let them know that I need a different flight out. And this is like when you're 19, right? The thoughts that you have, I'll just let them know. As I called, they're like, well, you can change your flight, of course, but it's going to be a $200 change fee. And I was just like, okay, there's no way that I can do that. Fuck, I got to go now. And at this point, it was like 7 hours before my flight was taking off. And when you take a Greyhound from Las Vegas to LA, it takes a long time. It takes like 5.5 hours, 6 hours, something like that. And so I was like, I got to go now. I go to the Greyhound station. At this point, I have like $30 to my name. Just the ticket to LA is more than that. And I'm waiting in line just thinking, I just had this internal drive, just like, I have to go. Like, I'm going to go. I don't know how, but it's happening. I have to go home. It's that feeling of having your back up against the wall where it's like, I don't see a way out. I don't know, but there's no going back. I have to make this work. And as I was standing in line, somebody randomly came out and said that they would sell their ticket, that they can't go. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And they said, oh, well, how does $25 sound? And I was like, that's amazing. So I have $5 left. I get on the bus, I go, and I'm riding. And on this trip, like, this was before iPhones, this was before anything. So I'm just like sitting there with my ADHD, like having a hard time. And there was something that came over me. It wasn't stress. It wasn't fear. It was just this sort of acceptance and ease and trust. There were little moments when I would kind of strategize and be like, okay, well, when I get there, if you're not familiar with LA, the Greyhound train station area is like an hour from the airport. And at this point, I know I'm supposed to get there with only 40 minutes before my plane takes off. And I don't know how to get there and everything. But I was just like, I don't know. I'm just going to do whatever it takes. I get to LA. I get off the Greyhound bus with my little pitiful luggage that I had it was just so sad. And I walk up and there was this line of taxi people standing there. And I'm looking and I'm walking and something just guided me. And it's not like I had a hand on my shoulder, a voice telling me. It was just like when you lock eyes with somebody and you're like, this is my person. And it was this tall Russian man who was it's not even like he looked particularly inviting, but I was just like, it's you. So I walk up to him and I just say, listen, I don't have any money and I'm supposed to take a flight to go home at 6 o'clock. At this point, it's like 5:15. And I was just like, I know I shouldn't even ask, but is there any way you would take me? He said, yes. And I'm just totally surprised and excited and also not surprised because it also was just like, I just had this unwavering trust that it had to happen because there was literally no other thing that could happen. So as we're in the taxi, we're chatting and he was like such a lovely, wonderful, warm guy. He says to me, do you want me to drop you off at your roommates? Because at this time, I still technically lived in LA, even though I was spending all my time in Las Vegas. Because you're not going to make your flight. Like, do you want me to and I just shook my head and I was like, no, I have to go home. I have to go home. I know I'm not going to make it. I have to go home. As we pull up to the airport, he gives me his card, which I still have in a keepsake box somewhere because it was just so magical. And he was so lovely. And we get there. I race to the counter and kind of say, hey, I missed my flight. Is there any way? I don't have any money. And they look up my information and they say, well, actually, your flight was delayed. It hasn't left yet. You're okay. Again, there's no way all of this should have happened. But I get on the flight, I get home, and I actually never went back to LA except to get my stuff with my aunt Kim months later. I just think about those types of experiences. I've had so many in my life where, for whatever reason, I just lock in to this trust and release and faith, ultimately. But I spend the majority of my life hustling and forcing and pushing myself into things and then wondering why there's so much resistance. This last year, since we started the podcast and with YouTube and all of this TikTok, everything, I've left my job as a commercial photographer. I left my reputation. I left all of that just knowing that this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to share and I want to learn and I want to have conversations and I want to really be in it and use me, this vehicle, as a conduit to be able to talk about the things I always wish I could hear more about and to grow and to inspire and empower other people. So there has been this guiding knowing within me. But then also there's the metrics and the likes and the money and all of this stuff that has been in deep flux, the relationships, the contractors, all of these things. And as a result of all of these factors in the air floating around, bumping into each other, I think had to, it's time, I've had to really start to practice this idea of release. I get emotional even thinking about it because it's so hard for me to just let go and to just trust what is meant for me will find me. And yet it's something that I say all the time. You probably heard me on the podcast. The whole idea of being magnetic is allowing what's attracted to you to find you and to repel the things that aren't, and you just being you. And I know this, but personally, behind the scenes, there has been so much white knuckling energy because I still I want to be successful. I want to be financially abundant and stable and to be able to bring in a beautiful, supportive team, to build a company that is so strong in what it does, its vision, its mission, its team, that I can empower other people to be able to share their truths and create the creative outlets that can help other people, whether they're more podcasts or YouTube channels or TikToks, whatever it is, to help people be able to channel what they feel called to do without having to go through all of this. I am figuring out everything as I go, almost exactly as I've been trying to learn this lesson, which it is not easy for me to encode new information. We know this, the fox knows this, when she tried to teach me to turn on the fan in her bathroom before I get in the shower. And it took 3 months of me literally trying, but I just get so ingrained in my routine. My thoughts are distracted, whatever, that it took me a long time to encode it. And so especially these universal lessons, it takes a while for me to really trust. But in that, supporting me, I think have been these spaces of learning and growth. So I've been listening, I've mentioned this podcast, the Expanded podcast by Lacey Phillips, that's all about the energetics of manifestation and really coming into your worth. I had an amazing session with my cousin Desiree Batiste, who's a wonderful, from Black Honey Wellness, who is a wonderful Reiki healer, and really leaning into that. I have been even listening to Moonstone Witchery, which is a podcast about witches and spells and power and protection and all of this. And and digging into astrology. And I had my first session ever with Daniel Beinstein, which is amazing, phenomenal astrologer. And the session was so fabulous. I've like gone back and watched it 3 times. And there have been these things that have just been like supporting me. And also I feel like I've just been like thrown into, I'm a pair of sneakers thrown into the tumble dry. And it's just like boom, 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 banging around. It's just like, boom, 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 boom. This is probably a horrible idea, but it's just like banging around in this really uncomfortable way. So we have all that stuff. I went through this huge like burnout period, end of summer into this early fall, where it was just like I was totally blocked. And it was all my stories of not being good enough, not being successful enough, not being able to focus, feeling lost, feeling alone. Because the irony of being a quote unquote content creator influencer is that you are interacting with people, but it doesn't feel like that in your body. So even though you're giving energy, you're getting fed, your body still feels alone. And especially for somebody like me who's an extrovert, it's just like I kept telling myself the story, I have no friends, I have no friends. So as that's happening, I've also been feeling really called to start to be more honest about my truth. And this is the hilarious part of it all. You'll probably roll your eyes in listening to this, but I have had 3 independent healers, 2 from different modalities. So 2 from Reiki, 1 from pranic healing, that knowing nothing about me said, your throat chakra is fucked up. I'm new to all of this, but basically, per my understanding, your throat chakra is really the one that has to do with communication, but more importantly, speaking your truth. And I do this for a living. And also, when it comes to really setting boundaries and being clear about my experiences and what I need, the fear of judgment, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being abandoned are all these deep things that I've dealt with as a kid that come up and operate in the background. And so I've been really practicing being more honest. And, one of the things that has happened recently is that I had this really amazing friend that I felt this really close bond with. And I was super vulnerable and just shared in a video where I was at, what my truth was about the dynamics, because it can be tough when you're in a new friendship, not knowing the dance. You've never really gone through things. And so you don't know, is this just like honeymoon, fabulous energy that we're just vibing, but it doesn't have the stick-to-itiveness as other relationships? Or is this something that like we can really be around each other for a while and like go deep and whatever? And then also there are things like my sense of humor is kind of fucked and morose and things like that. And so you just, with longtime friendships or with certain special connections, you can trust each other to be able to say, hey, that hit me the wrong way or whatever. But it's hard with newer friendships. And I threw my heart out on the table, and that was that. Instead of telling myself the story that if you're true, honest, and you share too much of yourself, people will be turned off and leave. I've really been putting intentional focus into saying, what is meant for me will find me. Like, I know I'm a great friend, but it also has so much to do with timing and so much to do with energetic fit. And if that person, as beautiful and amazing, as wonderful as they are, just if it's not matching, that's okay. But it's been one of these things that has been challenging because it's happened, like the same lesson has happened in multiple areas. And one of the things that really broke my heart on Friday, actually, again, having to do with me really doing my best, speaking my truth, communicating in a way that's authentic instead of manipulating. I lost temporarily, hopefully, one of the most important relationships in my life. And I can't really say much more about it. And it's not really necessary for the details, but it just really has rocked my world. And so with that, I've been trying to say to myself, like, how do I move through this grief? Because I've experienced a lot of loss. The whole like season of my 20s was littered with really intense death, like just bang, bang, bang in our family again and again and again. Having gone through that, there's just like, it deepens your bucket. It deepens your well, like your capacity, and it makes you less fuckwithable. Like you're grounded in a way that somebody who hasn't experienced that might not be. And I can tell you, like, the loss of this person felt the same. Like I had to grieve it, and I'm still grieving it in a way that's so hard. Like, you know, those moments where like you can't even breathe. And the only way to get through it is like to absolutely stay in the moment, because thinking about the future, like you just start to hyperventilate. I, in the past, would just stuff. And I'm one of those, Brene Brown talks about it, where it's like hypofunctioning or hyper functioning when it comes to stimuli like that. And I'm definitely a hyper functioner, where it's like, okay, it's like the one time in my life I can actually be really organized. So I'm like, okay, I got this. What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? What, you know, and just like really not in my feelings, very much in operation mode. I've been trying this time to just allow myself to feel it and to be really clear about what I need, which has been a lot of alone time and listening to certain podcasts that have been supportive and allowing myself to just lose it and wail, allowing myself to interact with pictures of this person, and, you know, instead of just like shutting it all down because it's too painful. And in that way, I guess I am really proud of myself, because in the past, I used to just want or feel like I needed to be near somebody so much, but then there was nothing they could say that would make me feel any better. And you know, like when these huge moments happen, like there is literally nothing anyone can say. So in fact, what I learned through surviving a lot of that death is the best thing I found to say is, I know there's nothing I can say right now. I am nervous that I'll say the wrong thing. I want really to be supportive of you. So I'm here for you. I'm going to check in with you, and I want you to never feel obligated to respond if that's too much nothing. I just want you to know that I'm here to talk, to not talk, to distract you, to be there for you and to listen. Whatever it is you need, I'm here, and I'm just going to remind you of that, because I know this isn't something that's going to go away anytime soon, and I fucking love you. So I've been proud of myself that I've been able to process enough to say, hey, I'm not able to interact with anyone right now. I can feel that that anything that you were to say to be supportive would be upsetting or not what I need. And I would be resentful and angry. And I don't have the emotional regulation right now. So I just need to be alone. That has been really, really helpful and powerful in working through things. And then it's just been like literally thing after thing after thing. And also, there are these bright spots. This episode you'll hear next week with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon was so amazing. I'm so grateful, because she actually called me after and was so generous and kind and amazing in saying what a beautiful conversation it was, and just so many wonderful things. And then it gave me this hope of like, yeah, I am on the path. I am doing what I need to do. I am really showing up in a way that I want. I feel like we all have that capacity to drift and weave and bob and feel really good and feel really low. And there are just these moments, though, of grace that when you're not expecting, but you're open to it, can just find you. And that whole conversation, but particularly that wonderful act of generosity after, was just like so inspiring and wonderful. And it reminded me of each of our inherent power to shift things for other people. Because I think about how many times in my mind I'm saying something so wonderful about someone, but I don't say it out loud. I think we all feel so weird a lot of times giving compliments and just really saying, hey, you are amazing. In fact, I actually did a pre-call for somebody else who's going to be on the show that I'm so excited about. And as I was saying, I think you are so amazing. I followed your work and the way you're showing up is really wonderful. And they said, oh, you're too kind. That's it, and just kind of shut it down. And I thought about, I've done that a lot, that instead of really allowing myself to receive that, I just like wall up, push it away, like try to reflect that out. And so I, being me, was like, no, I mean it. I don't say these kind of things to everyone. Really, truly, the way you're showing up, like, and like I made this person like really hear it, because it is so important that we let the good sink in, because we know the bad can just like, hey, pitch a tent, camp out inside of us energetically. But somehow the good stuff we don't really let get in, soak into our bones, and just allowing for that, but also reminding yourself that, and me reminding myself that, like, we are these really powerful people that have no idea the ripple of that. I have no idea if I'm in line and I see someone and I just say, I love your style. Like, it is just exuding vibrancy and point of view, and it just makes me happy. I have no idea how that is going to impact them for the day, for the week, for the month. And I feel like that generosity and that openness and that act of bravery, because it is brave to talk to a stranger, it is brave to say something kind, especially in cultures where we're taught like to not be egotistical and like to not think we're great. And really, one of the things that I talk about like in my courses is true vulnerability is not only owning the ways in which you suck, but it's also owning the ways in which you are great. Because I think a lot of us rock with this half of our vulnerability where we're saying, oh, yeah, right outside of the frame, my place looks tornado swept. But if I'm doing that, and I'm not also saying, but I'm really proud of myself for the way I'm showing up here, I'm really good at this one thing, this is my superpower, then it isn't really being vulnerable. It isn't really allowing somebody to see us, see the fullness of who we are, for better and for worse. And I really wonder what side of it you're on, because some people do tend to really own their amazing and maybe even over project that and really not want to talk about or like soak in the stuff that they're bad about, they're not great in. However, I feel like more of us are, it's not so hard to share, to have self-deprecating humor and share all the ways in which we're odd, weird, not cool, spectacular, but really not say, oh yeah, I've done this. And oh my gosh, this is like a little mini rant, but the way that we introduce ourselves, like my TikTok that first exploded was really about like when you introduce yourself, saying your first and last name. And it's just this one little piece that I think really shows us the disparity between identity rich folks and folks who are dominant culture, and how we introduce who we are and our accomplishments. What kind of energy are you diminishing and withholding your light and introducing yourself in a way that is not an accurate reflection of who you are? Meanwhile, Chad over here is like, hi, I'm Chad Smith. And it doesn't mean you need to do it with a big degree of douchebaggery, but really like allowing yourself to be the big deal that you are. In fact, I'm actually doing a Skillshare class on magnetic first impressions, because it's a workshop that I had done before that I want to do for Skillshare, because Skillshare just seems like a really cool platform. If you're not familiar, we'll drop a link down below so you can check it out. And I think there's even a code that you can get the first month free or something. But in recording this course, it has been really fun to synthesize this information on how to really present yourself without withholding, without minimizing, and really authentically communicating the amazingness that you are. So to that end, I want to tell you about something in my life that is going well. And that is, I dropped a little teaser about it a couple episodes back, but in the beginning of the month, I decided that I am going to go on a Felth journey, fit and healthy, Operation Felthy AF, and really document the process, approach things in a way that is really prioritizing my health. That is something like I have so much drama around body, around health, around self-care, stemming as far back as you can imagine. It's really been tough to reprogram myself to really start to think intentionally about movement, to really think about the food that I'm putting in my body, not from a restrictive diet culture way, but really thinking about it from this lens of what is optimal for my body. And definitely not doing the emotional overeating, I need to numb thing, which I'm very impressed with myself given some of the stuff I've been rocking with lately. But basically, it all stemmed from this moment where I had for years, like I was an early adopter of paleo, early adopter of keto, I tried the carnivore diet. Like I have just been really into research, really searching, trying to figure out what it is to heal my gut, to help me manage my body composition, like to feel good, to have like a healthy relationship with food that wasn't this feast or famine. Like I would have said even a month ago that I had a binge eating disorder. Now, I don't take that lightly. And, when it comes to diagnosing, it's a very thing. But like, if you look it up, I met all the criteria then. What's interesting is that now I don't think I do. So what changed? Well, a month and a half ago, I got this thing called Zoe. I saw a thing on Instagram because the algorithm knows that I'm very into optimization and health from an intellectual point of view. I want to learn about it, not incorporate it. And it's this metabolic testing kit sort of situation where basically you get this kit and you do stool sample, you do blood sample, and you do a continuous glucose monitor. So it's that thing you stick to your arm and it reads your glucose levels for 2 weeks, like all the time for 2 weeks. And then what's interesting is that they have you track everything that you're eating, but then also they give you a couple of challenge meals. And what that allows them to do is say, okay, if you adhere to this properly, we know exactly how your body metabolizes the carbs in these muffins and the fats in these muffins versus these. And they play with the ratios so they can really see what your particular metabolism is doing. So I do this. I'm going to do a YouTube video about it because it was interesting and weird. So I do this and then you wait for like 6 weeks. So twiddling my thumbs, moving around life, and then they give you the report. Now, what is mind-boggling and fascinating is that my report, somewhat unexpectedly, said that I am average in digesting carbohydrates. My body can relatively easily clear that. Is it optimal, superior? No, but it's decent. However, when it comes to metabolizing fat, clearing those lipids out of my bloodstream, my body was below average. Now, here's where this gets interesting. About 7-8 years ago, there was a window of 3 years where I was really at peace with food. And I kept referring back to this period of time. It was when I first discovered paleo. I naturally was able to maintain my body composition that I really loved. I had energy. I had trust in food instead of this kind of like, when is it coming? Restrictive sort of thing or binging. It was just wonderful. And this whole time I've been trying to get back there. Well, since then, like I guess like 6-ish years ago, I heard about keto and did a lot of research because that's the brain that I have. And so I read papers, I listened to hours and hours and hours of lectures, all of this about ketosis and all the autophagy, just all of this stuff. If you're not familiar with keto, it means that you are eating high fat, moderate protein, low carb. Now, it seems silly in hindsight that despite it never having worked for me, I had tried to stick with it for like 6 years. And I would go through these cycles of really adhering, but not feeling great. And then binging because I would have these like kind of carb fixations and then binging and then feeling guilty and whatever. In these last few years, my weight has steadily increased. My health has steadily deteriorated. I've just been in this like deep confusion about all of it. Now, getting these results, I thought back to that period of years when it was before I had heard about keto. How was I eating? I wasn't going out of my way to eat fat. Like, sure, fat occurred, but I wasn't going out of my way. I've never personally been a huge fan of red meat. It just has not really sat well in my stomach. So I wasn't really eating a lot of that. And I was eating vegetables and things. Interesting. So after having received the Zoe report, I was just sort of shaken where it was like, okay, you've been trying to fit this square metabolism into a round ketogenic hole, and maybe you can start to eat in a way that's more aligned with your metabolism. Magic. It is almost as if it were magic. All of my obsessive food stuff has diminished. I went back to this like trust around food, and I've been tracking things to see what my body really likes. I've been prioritizing protein, but leaner protein like ground turkey, which like makes me happy. Like my body likes it. Whereas when I was eating burgers and things like that, I would have to kind of force myself to eat it or put cheese on it or something to kind of mask the fact that my body like really didn't want it. And so it's been super, super fascinating that all of a sudden I have way more energy. I feel better and excited, and just like I have control over my destiny for the first time in a really long time. The reason I'm saying this is not because I feel like you should eat like me. In fact, what I learned through this experience is this idea of bio-individuality, that all of our bodies are different. And what works for me may not work for you. And I feel like this is something that we hear people say all the time. And yet we get so dogmatic about this is the best way, that's the best way. And really, the best way is probably what's working for you. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a doctor. This is not food, nutrition, medical advice. I really just personally benefited so much from having the biofeedback, like having the documentation to really help me say, okay, this is what's going on. This is the recommendation. Try this. And it was super helpful. The Zoe thing is expensive. It's like $400. But it ended up being really amazing. I actually got one for my mom. So we can test her thing and everything. So I'll leave a link below so you can check it out. But yeah, it's enlivened me in this way where it's like, I am excited now. I'm proud of myself to really take my health seriously. It's not like the self-care, like woo-woo, bubble bath kind of energy, which is totally cool if that's what you're into. But for me, I just like, it's still an eye rolling sort of thing because I like to think of myself as somebody who doesn't need self-care, but that's bullshit. And this type of self-care, really fueling myself, really being in touch with my body, really thinking about breath and dealing with my emotions and all of this has been so amazing. And I'm so proud of it. So as I am entering into this Gia 2.0 version of myself, I invite you to also join me if you want, whatever that looks like for you. But just join me in this intentionality around taking care of yourself, whatever that looks like for you. I really feel like I've spent so much time and energy running myself into the ground, forcing things, really trying to make things work, and instead taking a step back and trying to connect with that release and that ease. Thinking about that with food, like what is my body like? What do I not have to force down myself? And then once I landed on that, magic. My body isn't trying to reach for all these other things. I'm not having these impulses to binge and like pull food out of the garbage because there was a little bit more left, which I have stories about binges, let me tell you. And instead, allowing that ease to really show up in other parts of my life. I'm really excited about trying to stay in this space. And I know I'm going to be bumped out of it. I'm going to get back in the race and then the universe will knock me on my ass and I will remember this. But I'm curious about where this will lead. And I'm curious for you what the universal lessons might be that you are being called to learn, that you might be rebelling against because we're bold and also rebellious, and what it would mean to release and accept and roll with whatever is coming your way. I fucking love you. Thank you for hanging out with me in this episode. It has been so cathartic to just share and connect. In terms of the Mafia, I am getting ready to actually retool it. So stay tuned for that. And then in the meantime, if you listen to this episode to this point, I really feel like you should send me a DM and let me know because you are fucking amazing. And I'm so, so, so grateful for you. This week, I hope you charge forth with the love and self-compassion that you deserve, and that you move through the world with righteous self-care and not giving a fuck about what anybody else thinks. I will see you next week. Bye. If you love this episode and the show, be sure to rate and review on iTunes and share it out in the world with a friend, family, frenemy, whatever feels good. You can follow us on Instagram at The Bold Bitch Podcast, and we're waiting for you at theboldbitch.com/mafia. See you next week.